This is what it sounds like inside the house. Let me see if I can. This is where a pump is picking it up from. You can hear the water rushing in from that outside tube, and then this goes straight down into the tank, and then this hose right here that my hand is on is the suction hose for the pump. That's the pressure tank for it. And that's kind of how that works. There's a gauge and stuff there. And that's a T-valve. So this is set up just the same as it would be for a if we were pulling it up from a well. That's the brand name on it. These you can get from like Home Depot, and then that we just get these from Harbor Freight. But this one's we've been using this one for probably about 5 years without any problems. And in this tank here, we've been using that for probably going on 15 years now. But you can get a Harbor Freight pump that's got the pressure tank on it. That's the way that I would recommend going, and that's because these tanks are pretty expensive to buy separately. Oh, and this is the pressure system here. You just use a regular tire gauge on that. What you do is you drain the system down so it's completely out of water. There's a diaphragm in there that closes, and then you just use a regular compressed air, and you pump it up to the pressure, something in the range anywhere from 10 to 20 psi. Then when that tank fills up, the water of course is on the bottom, and it comes up and pressurizes the air that's up on top, and then that air gives it that continued pressure, so you can still have pressure on your system even when the pump is off. So it'll go through a range. Like, you can set it, I think ours is set at like 40. Let's see, what is that? I think ours shuts off at 40 and kicks back on at 20 psi, and then it's just running off of an inverter. But there's a chart on here to show you right there. Let's see if I can get that in there. And that shows you what psi you want to set this Schrader valve at, this tire valve. So, and then you do that. It gives you instructions here, I think, somewhere. But that's what you do, is you just drain the system completely down, and then you just get it with your air pressure. And use this gauge as kind of a guide, because it's going to vary a little bit, and then you're running off grid, so you're probably going to run lower pressure than what a guy in a house might have to have, just because you're powering it with an inverter, so you don't want to be using too much power to build it up for extra pressure that you don't necessarily need. And then we don't even leave our inverter on all the time. We've got, this has pressure, so most of the time when we need water, it's there. And then if we need it to repressurize, we just turn the inverter on. And then this is the inverter we're running off of right now. Another Harbor Freight one. People knock this Harbor Freight stuff, but this is this inverter is probably 10 years old. It doesn't have a problem. The only thing that I did change on it, though, was it's got a fan. I don't know if you can hear the fan running now when I throw the switch. But we disabled the fan because the fans are just kind of noisy. And then most of the time you don't need it. It's got a thermal cutoff switch, so if it were to overheat, it would cut itself off. So 27 series deep cycle batteries we're using. This is just an extra trio that's up here, and then this is our main bank that we're running off of right now. So let's see, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 batteries on that. You know, and that's a little more batteries than what we need for our primary. I just have to set up another. These batteries are sitting here on a slow charge solar panel. And I'll set up a separate inverter that's hardwired to these, and probably take one or two of these batteries, one of these batteries probably, and put it up here, add it to these. And then but I'm going to have to check them. They're probably getting overcharged because we're not pulling off of them at all. See how they're starting to get, there's some acid coming up at the top. And you know, and we don't use distilled water anymore with our it's all kind of messy. I just haven't cleaned it up for a while and had other projects going, but we don't even use distilled water. We'll just get regular battery acid. You just buy it at the auto parts store. And you know, people will say, well, you use too much acid and you'll have a problem with the corroding the lead inside there, and I found that that's not true at all. In fact, when the battery's new, that's what they fill it with completely as acid. It's not a mix of acid and water, it's just pure acid. So when it's low, we just add acid. And these batteries here, we just got these, but the set that we had just before these, that's the date on there, was from 2012. So 7 years out of a set of batteries. I don't think we did bad at all. So they can disagree with how we do it, but it works. That's the charge controller for one of the wind generators I haven't mounted up. We've been kind of experimenting with some of these, but that's kind of what that is. And yeah, so that's kind of how that setup is. But yeah, Harbor Freight has just been a lifesaver for a lot of this stuff, because when we first started doing this stuff, we went off grid back in 2000, about 2006, and it was all new to us then. And the solar stuff was real expensive then, and batteries and everything, and it just wasn't readily available. And that was actually, we went off grid before there was even a Harbor Freight in Billings. So you want out, Bosco? There you go. But yeah, and then there's you don't need to have a charger that big, that's just what we had handy, but that one's set up and it's wired directly into the generator, and we just leave there's the leads to the charger right there. We just leave them hooked to the batteries all the time. So whenever the generator's running, it's charging the batteries. So that way, if for some reason we're low, if we didn't get enough solar or wind or something, or we're just doing a large power consumption thing like watering animals or something, and we need to use the power system, then we just run the generator just to get the system, just to keep from depleting our battery power. And you know, people say, well, these will drain the battery slightly, leaving the charger connected to it all the time, but it's not. I mean, the amount of voltage that it's going to pull is going to be so nominal, you're not even going to notice it. And just for the ease of not having to screw with stuff, because that's really where I think the big key to living off grid is just getting it set up so that you don't have to screw with it. I like it so it's easy to monitor, but I want it so that there's as less hassle dealing with it as possible, so that when you need power, you've got power and it's not a big deal. And but yeah, that's basically it. So it's just running this inverter here, spare batteries here that I still got to wire up. We've got another small inverter here. We'll run a small inverter a lot of times. This one also has the fan disabled, but we'll run a small inverter to charge up some things if we're just using like a travel charger, just a 110 travel charger for phones or something. Even though we can charge them up through the batteries through either that or these here. You know, here's one there, but we'll use this one if it's just going to be a low draw and we want to leave it on. And because just this being on, even without pulling power, just this being on is going to pull some power. Same with this. This is going to pull a little bit of power too, just by being on. But this one here is going to pull more power than this one if it's just on standby. So so we'll just use the smaller inverters for small stuff. And then really the only thing we use this inverter for anymore is probably to charge some power tools, the DeWalt stuff. Hair clippers are getting charged. We use it primarily just for the water pump, and then I guess my wife uses it for her hair dryer too. But that's kind of the only thing we're using it for. But I'll get it cleaned up too, and then do some more pictures of it. And I wouldn't mess with the. We just use a 12-volt deep cycle battery. And we've tried the golf cart batteries too, the 6-volt, and then you just wire them parallel. And it doesn't, for the cost of what you're buying for amp hours, you can buy more amp hours cheaper by buying these kind of batteries. Granted, it's going to take more batteries to get you that many amp hours, but you're talking about a really large battery that's going to be really expensive when you get into those 6-volt golf cart batteries. And these, we can get them rebuilt at the Interstate dealer for, I think, $40 plus the core. So that's hands down, that's the way to go. They do have rebuilt 6-volt golf cart batteries there too, but if you compare the amp hours and then divide the amp hours by the dollar that you're paying, you're buying amp hours cheaper by buying these, is what I'm getting at. And they've got some other, see, there's 27, boy, I can't remember my series right now. I think the next one's 32, but that's a little bit bigger. That's probably what I'll get the next time. And with the batteries, that's fine. You just want to, as far as when you're wiring them in series, I'm not sure if I said that right on the 6-volt one. The 6-volt one, you're going in parallel, and then these are in series. So you're just going positive to positive, positive to positive, and then of course on the 6-volt ones you're going positive to negative, and then you've got, I couldn't, and then you've got it, so you're wiring it up so it's a 12-volt battery, but that's parallel, and this is series right here. But where was I going with that? Oh yeah, if you're going to use the batteries, just use the same size batteries and wire those together. Don't be mix and matching different size batteries. Preferably you would want to buy the batteries all at the same time and wire them all up direct. Get the same batteries, buy them at the same time, and wire those together. But if you had to replace a battery in your bank, just make sure that you replace it with the same type of battery. In fact, I would even go with the same brand of battery, and just to be safe. And when I was doing heavy truck repair, if we had, a lot of those trucks would have 4 batteries in them in a semi truck, and just the hands down the rule was at any shop that I was at, if we replaced one battery, we replaced them all. But we were also dealing with somebody else's money. It was someone else paying for it, but that was the only sure way to do it, so that we could ensure that the customer wasn't going to have problems. And so that's something to keep in mind. You might be able to replace one, but just watch that, because you don't mix and match, certainly, but if you do replace them, just kind of keep an eye on them. And otherwise, I guess that's it.